All right, I have a little something different for you today. And the topic for this video is going to be about ham radio. And this is my Elmer, Jack. And he's the one that helped me out getting my ham radio license. And so I'm going to ask him a few questions about where and how he got started, a little bit about his background, and so on and so forth. So, Jack, thanks for getting me to where I'm at.
No problem. Glad to help out.
So tell me a little bit about what got you interested in ham radio, and what year that would have been, and how old you would have been, and tell me a little bit about your first setup.
Okay. Actually, it started many years ago when I was about 14 years old. Our parents had an old television, and the picture tube died, and they decided to buy a new one. So I said, well, I'm going to take it up into my room and see what I can do with it. And it was one of those old type with a tuner that you could tune the tuner inside. And I was able to pick up 6 meters on my television. And so when I heard ham radio, I said, oh, that's pretty cool. I need to check that out. So I started looking into ham radio, and I was always been interested in electronics and technology, especially electronics, and especially radios. So I went ahead at 17 years old.
Now, what year would that been?
That would have been 1959 when I took the test for my novice license.
Okay.
And passed the novice, and got my license actually in January of 1960, because I took the test in December.
Okay.
But anyhow, as a novice, my first rig was a homebrew.
Okay.
The only problem was with that, I kept getting pink tickets from the FCC because I had harmonics. So I decided I better go ahead and buy one that works better.
Right.
So I ended up getting a Heathkit AT1, and also picked up a Hammerlin HQ110.
Okay.
And that was a big investment for me at the time.
So when you say homebrew, tell me a little bit about, would that have been the old, what do you call them, the vacuum tubes?
Yes.
Okay.
The homebrew transmitter I made was built around an 807 tube, and I had some plug-in coils that I had made. I think I got a book out of the library, because I used to go to the library a lot and read about radio and ham radio, and I found a amateur radio handbook in the library. I took it home and I went through the whole thing, and I built myself a transmitter.
Just from the book at the library.
Yeah.
And so folks, just so you know, this is how things were done before the days of the internet. You went to your library or ordered a book through the mail, with catalogs and stuff, I guess.
Yeah, there was no cell phones, there was no internet. If you wanted to look up something, you had to go to the library. And the library from where we lived was about 2 miles away.
Okay.
So I would walk to the library, I'd check out some books, and I'd walk back home, read the books, and take them back to the library and get some more.
Right. So tell me a little bit about your exam experience, because a lot of people don't know, at least my age, are not aware that the exam were a lot different back in the day. So tell me a little bit about how that worked.
Well, yeah, the exam for the novice license back then, now they have technician license, but back then in the 50s and 60s, you had to take a code test. You had to pass 5 words per minute code test. So I got proficient in Morse code and went and took the test. I did really well with the Morse code, and I passed my test with no problem.
Okay. And so we didn't have the exam sessions that we do now back then either. So you had to go to
I actually had to go to the FCC office and take the test. And the people that were supervising the test, they were not very easy to get along with, let's put it that way.
The tough
They
old
were-
military types.
Yeah, they were pretty strict about, how you did things, and so they watched over you, while you were taking your code test, and they watched over you while you were taking your written test. And maybe a bit nervous with it, they did that, but I still passed.
Kind of like my session going to Jacksonville. And, I mean, I was already nervous enough going to do that, and then nothing like your situation, of course. That was easy compared to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, but what happened was I ended up going. Started to go to college, but realized that at the time they didn't have too much in the way of any kind of program or for scholarship, so I had to pay for everything. And I decided probably the best way to get education in electronics would be to go into the military and go into the Air Force, and I did. And when I got in the Air Force, and I went to electronics school, and that's where I picked up a lot of training in electronics and electronic equipment, and I actually worked telemetry and missile testing. But I let my license lapse, unfortunately. So when I got out, I had to retest, and I retested as a general. And I passed my general, but I did not have to take the code at that time. By that time, the code was no longer required.
Okay.
So that made it a lot easier.
Right.
Because code for general, back in the day, you had to do 13 words a minute. I could have.
So, folks, just for example, that's like this right here. When you see the old Western movies on the telegraph thing,
Yeah.
same kind of basic idea. So think about that, 13 words per minute. That's
Yeah. But what's interesting is the key that I use most often is the same key that I used as a novice. It's a J44 Navy key, came out of a ship, a World War II ship, and I forget exactly how I ended up with it, but I hung on to it because I really did like that key. I did pick up a new one, J38, but I do like the J44 better.
probably something with the way it was manufactured and feel compared to the
Well, sending Morse code is all about the feel
Right.
too. How the key feels, how
Right.
it responds to
Right.
the way you send code.
and kind of like a good solid mechanical keyboard today for your computer. It all depends on
Yeah. And I prefer straight key versus the paddle.
Okay.
I tried the paddle. The only problem was I would send too many dots and too many dashes. So I said, I'm not going to even bother with it. I'm going to
Right.
go back to straight key.
So fast forward about how many years till today?
Oh, wow. Long time. Let's see. From the 60s to now.
Okay.
How many years is that?
I can't even do the math on that.
That's 50s, 60 years?
Okay,
Wow.
I think you mentioned you just had a birthday and that'll make you 83 now?
I'm 82 now.
82. Okay,
But
wow.
I've been licensed for a long time.
So he's been ham radio licensed longer than I have been alive.
Yeah,
so-
probably longer than most. And
Right. So tell me a little bit about, okay, so now what would be your, I guess, top reason for being a ham radio licensed?
Well, I still like communicating with people around the world. I do it in multiple ways because there's so many different modes. Ham radio has changed tremendously from when I started. We have digital, PSK, RTTY was around then, but it was a lot more difficult to do. And I do sideband, single sideband. I do CW, and I do FT8 and FT4. But I like contacting other countries, and I've contacted I've contacted about 180 countries. Now, some people have done more, they've done over 200, but at 180, I feel I'm doing pretty well.
You've covered most of the globe on that.
Yeah, most of the world.
So
yes.
what would be one of your most unique contacts out of all of those that you would say would be the most memorable?
Well, there's several.
Okay.
My first most memorable contact was a DX contact as a novice.
Okay.
I contacted, I was running 50 watts to my antenna. At the time was a it was not vertical, it was a long
And
wire
just
antenna.
kind of dumb it down for our viewers who don't know anything about ham radio.
Okay, well, yeah, I assume a lot, I guess.
Right.
But my first contact was in Sweden,
Okay.
SM5BZ, which was interesting because just a couple years ago I contacted him on sideband. And I said, if you still have the old log, I'm in it.
Same person.
The same guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's very rare, I would guess,
That
that you
is-
would get the same
that is a
person,
rare-
same contact.
When I heard him on the air, I had to contact him. I just
Wow.
had to.
And like just as we know from trying to do emergency communications from back home, if you don't practice and if you don't have pre-established protocols and time frames, and your frequencies, depending on the time of day, are going to be different.
Oh, yes.
And however many people are on the air at that time, it's very rare that you're going to meet somebody on the air at that time of day, just
Yeah,
by the
it
way
just-
nature ham radio.
It was a coincidence that just happened to occur at the right time, and
Wow.
and I happened to be on the air listening. But yeah, right now, actually, we're in a favorable. Let me explain. With ham radio, the most important thing is not so much the radio as the antenna and the conditions of propagation. If propagation conditions are good, you have a good antenna, you can make good contacts,
Right.
even with an inexpensive radio.
Right.
You
And
know?
explain just in a few words what propagation means.
Propagation is where your signal is sent up into the ionosphere and is able to bounce back
Right.
to Earth.
Right.
There are conditions where that ionosphere lifts and it actually gets thinner, and
Right.
sometimes your signal will go right through it.
Right.
And then
And
it's
that-
hard to make contact.
Right. And that depends on what the sun is doing at the time and other weather events.
The sunspots affect radio communication.
Right.
Right now, we're in a favorable sunspot cycle. It's
Okay.
very active, and when it's very active, propagation is generally better,
Right.
and it is really good right now.
And that depends on your frequencies that you're talking on
It
too.
also depends on the frequency, because we can operate from a low frequency of around 160 meter, and I don't know the exact frequency of that,
Right.
but I never get on 160 meter. It's too
Right.
big of an antenna for me.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
You have to have it all the way down the street and back.
but I've operated from 80 meters, which is like 3,800, 3.8 megahertz, all the way up to 144 megahertz.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different ham bands that people can operate on
Right.
that are licensed.
Right.
If you're a licensed technician, you're restricted to a few
Right.
of those bands.
Right.
But if you're a general, you're not restricted.
Right.
But you may be restricted to some portions of
Right,
those ham
exactly.
bands.
Right.
Okay.
So, what is another reason? I guess I know both of us are into emergency communications, like
Yeah.
some of these storms that we've had since I moved to Florida, and thankfully I didn't have to go through any of the major ones. But I tell you what, it's been nice already to get live weather updates, even with non-hurricane
Oh, yeah.
season. And like you and I, when we first met, we did a lot of VHF. My house is 4 miles away in a straight line, give or take.
About 4 miles.
Yeah, so I can contact him if, say, the power is down and there's nothing working.
Mhm.
As long as I got a battery to plug my radio in, which I do, I can still contact him and other people around town when nothing else is working. So you would say that'd be another reason why?
Yeah. Emergency communications is extremely important during different disasters, whether they be weather related or chemical accidents from trains, or there
Right.
are wildfires or
Right.
floods.
Right.
There's a number of reasons where ham radio. There's a number of ways that ham radio can become a useful tool.
Right. Literally life-saving.
Life-saving.
Right.
In fact, there was a time when the local police radios were down, and they were relying on ham radio operators
Here in St.
here in
Augustine.
St. Augustine. That happened,
Wow.
I don't know, about 10 years ago, I guess.
Okay.
Something like that. But I've been active in ARES, which is Amateur Radio Emergency Services, and I did respond to a couple of events. One was a wildfire,
Okay.
and I actually manned a shelter
Okay.
with the radio to keep the
Right.
people there
Right.
informed.
Right.
Of,
And I'm an active member of ARES here in St. Johns County as well. So
okay.
haven't been involved, but thankfully that wasn't needed. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I've been involved in ARES for quite a while, but was interesting being part of that. The team that helped those folks in the different shelters in
Right.
North Florida when there was a wildfire. I was able to let them know where the wildfire was and whether or not it was endangering their property, because I had direct communications with the fire department and the police and
Right.
so on.
Right.
So that it was really beneficial, and I know the people were very thankful that we
Right.
were there.
Right. And so just to recap on what Jack was saying here, that the way we have it set up here in Florida, especially with all of our natural disasters that we have to deal with, is that we have the ARES program, like he was just talking about, and the police department would be connected to that, along with all of the regional hospitals also have ham radio operators ready to go. So let's think things are completely down, no way of communicating. All of us volunteers are going to be in place, and so we can all talk and communicate emergency traffic to each other for emergency situations.
Yes, and that is a real public service. And I know that when we're able to do that, all of the agencies are very cooperative, and they're very appreciative of the fact that we're able to assist them with communication, especially if their antenna gets damaged and they can't operate.
Right.
Then the only thing, actually, amateur radio is the communication of last resort. When everything else fails, amateur radio will still be running.
Definitely. And like I was saying, that's one of my top reasons for getting into ham radio. Of course, as we both know, it's just fun to have instantaneous live weather updates that are like, I'll hear a strike of lightning and I'm like, oi, and somebody else will comment across town that they heard it too. So literally live weather updates.
Yeah, the other reason too that I enjoy ham radio is I am into electronics, and I do restore and refurbish, recalibrate older ham radios. I've had a couple of tube type ham radios, Hallicrafters, a Hammerland, and also a national. In fact, I'm working on a national NC60 right now, tube radio. But I've done that for my own cell and for a couple of ham radio operators that didn't have the experience or didn't have the tools, and I have all the equipment here.
I know you helped me out big time getting my set up, so thanks a lot for that. I don't know where I'd be quite without your help on that. So to wrap this video up, what would you say to the general public that maybe is not aware of what ham radio is all about, and why should they even consider getting their ham radio license, even if it's just some average person that may not ever need it?
Well, for one, it's a very enjoyable hobby.
Right.
You get to talk to people all over the country
Right.
and all over the world. I've talked to people in foreign countries, and everybody says, well, do they speak English? And almost every country speaks English.
Yeah.
Some of them have a pretty heavy accent, but you can still speak to them.
Usually can make it out.
You can still talk to them. And I find that extremely interesting, to be able to talk to someone and find out what we don't talk about when we're trying to communicate with another ham. We never talk politics or religion. We're only talking about
Got a general.
We're only usually talking about the hobby, our antennas, our radio, how long we've been in it, what modes we operate.
Right.
The modes are like Morse code,
Right.
voice, digital.
Digital,
Those
right.
are the three major
Right.
ones. Yeah.
And so aside from that, is there any other thing that you would want to pass on to, say, a new ham coming up?
I think that you know, if you're interested at all in emergency communications, if everything shuts down and you don't have any way of communicating, you're really going to feel lost.
Right.
You're going to feel totally in the dark.
Right.
But if you have a ham radio, you can communicate with someone, and you can actually communicate with people around the country, and maybe get messages to your relatives in different places.
Especially across town even.
And across town, but an important thing too is if phone systems are down, cell phones are down, everything's down, you can communicate with a ham radio operator where your relatives are located and let them know that you're okay.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd have no idea.
No idea, or you wouldn't be able to call for help if you needed help with
You wouldn't,
local emergency
yeah.
team or anything like that.
Yeah, you can get on the radio and you can
Right.
actually call for help, and
Right.
they will find a way, someone will find a way to get you help.
Exactly, and that's the beautiful thing about the ham radio community. So I guess that probably about wraps it up for this one. Thanks
Okay.
for
Right.
being on this video, and I tell you what, without Jack's help, he's got me situated where I'm at right now, and hopefully I can get my amateur license coming up sometime soon. So we'll see how that goes once I get a better
Yeah.
setup and the right antennas. And I think I need to practice a little bit more
Well-
hands-on so it can sink in as to what I'm doing. But
It takes a little time to
Yeah.
get that kind of experience, and because I've been doing it so long, it's secondhand, and
Right.
there's a lot of things I assume that people, I guess I think everybody should know this, but they certainly don't.
right,
It's like a whole new thing.
right,
I've had many people ask me, well, how does this work and why do you do it?
right.
And I explain it, and they still don't really grasp the
Exactly.
importance of having a ham radio station
Right.
in your house.
Exactly.
It's a really fun hobby. I really enjoy it.
Well, thanks a lot again, and thanks for watching this video. Hope you learned something. Thanks to my mentor. It's actually in ham radio. Mentor is actually an Elmer, which back in the day, a guy by the name of Elmer was helping somebody out, and ever since, mentors were called Elmers in the ham radio community. So if you ever hear that again, you'll know what that means. So thanks again. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.